So tonight is Cape St Elias Lighthouse, which is going to be talked to, who's going to tell us about John Bocci, our local Cordovan, who is going to tell us the history, past, present, and future of the lighthouse and what we can all do to keep this beautiful historic place here in not Cordova, but I guess Prince William Sound.
Cape St Elias. Here we go. The Cape. So how many of you have been there? Lots. Good. So when you fly in a fixed wing aircraft, you land out here. And it is approximately 2.5 miles around the beach like this. Come in. And if you land in a helicopter, you land right there, which is about 250 yards. So make your choice. It's a hike. You know, it's not for the faint of heart. It's not a casual stroll. It's a little bit of a grunt. And anyway, moving on. You can't talk about Kayak Island without talking about Bering and his voyage of discovery. So I went down a couple rabbit holes on this. And one thing I discovered that was really interesting about this was they actually left St. Petersburg in 1733. Bering, Steller, and 3,000 of their best friends, and they trekked from St. Petersburg all the way to the Kamchatka Peninsula, basically built a town, and then built the boats to go on these expeditions, which is pretty phenomenal. I mean, it took them over 2 years to get there, just to start this expedition, which, I don't know, I thought that was staggering, since it only took them 11 days to go from there to there. And Steller called it 10 years for 10 hours because Bering only let him on the beach for 10 hours on Kayak Island, which, I don't know. So there were 2 boats on that expedition, the St. Peter and the St. Paul, and somewhere out here, they got into some fog and got separated. The St. Paul went on further east and ended up at what they think is Prince of Wales Island, where he sent one crew of guys into the beach. They never came back, so he sent another crew in. They never came back either, so he left. And he made it all the way back. However, Bering had problems, and they only made it this far, which is where he died the following winter. Anyway, pretty staggering, but when Steller was on shore, he named the Steller J, the Steller sea lion, and just about anything else he could put his hands on. While they were there, they also tapped into a fish camp that where they left baubles and took things like shoes and food and stuff like that. It wasn't a very fair trade. This led to, of course, 200 years of exploitation by the Russians, which was not very good for the locals or the sea otter population. And as soon as they wore that out, they sold it to us. And that was in, when was that? 1867, thank you. So after they sold it to us, there was lots of commerce. Of course, whaling and all that. And then pretty soon there was gold, there was copper, there was lots of ships going back and forth. And they were sinking like stones. They were going down like crazy. As soon as they started, the Morgans and Guggenheim started losing lots of money on these sinking ships. They pressured Congress to create a lighthouse district. And in the next 25 years, they built these 16 lighthouses. Cape St Elias was built in 1916. It only took them a little over a year to build it. It was pretty magnificent. That's a really terrible shot, but it gives you an idea. This is better. So this is how it was laid out. There's the bay here, and then there's the west side of the island here. This is the upper winch house, and they had a winch that went down and then on their cable cars. And this is the lower winch house, and this is where they would take their supplies. So they could go off either the east side or the west side, depending on the weather. This building here is what they call the boathouse. And this is the only wooden structure on site. And it's the one that we're working on right now. The rest of these are in pretty bad shape. They are officially condemned because of the asbestos of the lead paint. Remediation would cost more money than any of us have. So we're not really sure. We really can't do much but stabilize them. There's a much better shot. Sorry. I just should have brought some water. Anyway, so you can see where we're at. Okay, this is a great shot. So if you see this is the tombolo. It's a new word I learned. And obviously pre-earthquake, but it used to wash over with every tide, so it filled up with sand. They harvested enough sand off of that beach to build 190,000 bricks to build these buildings with, which I think is a pretty phenomenal number. If you've ever played with clay and sand, it takes a lot. But the best part about it is it shows the Fresnel lens. So this is pretty cool. This weighs 2,000 pounds. You can see it in our museum. There is a shaft that goes 30 feet down to the drive. And it's a pretty remarkable unit. What they did was in the beginning, they started using gears, but they found they were wearing the gears out. Anything that was metal, ball bearings, wheels, things like that, they would wear out. So Fresnel, who was the father of all lighthouses, came up with the idea for a mercury bath. And so the shaft was supported to this ring, and in St. Elias case, it went up 30 feet to support the lens. But then all of the weight was carried by this mercury bath. So there was zero friction. You could push the thing with your finger and it would spin. It's pretty remarkable. One of the problems though was, of course, off-gassing, which may explain why so many lightkeepers went nuts. But it was run on a clock gear, so every 6 hours they would have to go and hit the winding cable and wind the weight back up to the top, and then it would drop down again, and it was perfectly timed to go around, so it went around twice a minute. 2 4-second flashes. That's just a shot from the inside. But it's an incredible building. This is all cast bronze in this curved glass. So the cupola itself was pre-built in Ohio and then disassembled. They brought it up here and then they mounted it on top of their concrete tower. But it really is, it's a gorgeous piece of work. It's kind of a shame to see what kind of condition it's in, but we're not really sure what to do with it. I think the foghorns may have been another reason the lightkeepers went a little nuts, is it was a 4-second blast twice a minute, whenever there was. So just think about that for a second. That was fairly brutal, and it never gets foggy out there. But said and done, in 1974, when they automated the lighthouse, they took that magnificent Fresnel lens out and left this Walmart special, which you really can't see from very far away at all. So beach combing and airtime. So if you fly out, I showed you on the beach where you land in. This is that beach. Lots of different terrain between here and the Cape. But this gives you an idea of what the east side of that island looks like. For perspective, whoops, keep hitting the wrong button. For perspective, where is it? I can't quite see it, but there's a there's a barrel there. There's a buoy right there, an orange buoy that you use on the end of your gill net. So this is like pickup sticks. It's an absolute nightmare, but it's magnificent. Everything from South America, anything that rides that current ends up on Kayak Island. Unfortunately, after Fukushima, this was all, there was tons of garbage in this pile too. The entire beach line from one end of the island to the other was garbage. It was pretty sad.
Was it just the east side?
No, it was everywhere.
Yeah.
But the worst was the east side. The beach combing is good and fun and fascinating. There's all kinds of really cool stuff to find. It's heads big and small. This is a zone you cross between the airstrip, such as it is, and the Cape. So if I were a geologist, I could probably tell you something about it, but I'm not. All I can say is there's a lot of this going on with the Cape in the middle. And so it's a pressure from two plates, from the Pacific plate and the North American plate colliding. More of the same, more interesting things to walk on and try not to hurt yourself. Slippery rocks, that sort of thing. So you come to this beach, and for perspective, the landing zone is over here, over on the other side of this ridge. So this is actually a really nice beach, really pleasant to walk on. It gets a little messy, but it's a great spot. One of the things, back again to the God, I'm so glad I know all you guys. Back to the beach combing. Anyway, sliding to minor example of beach combing. This is something that we're very familiar with. There isn't a trip to the Cape that goes by where you don't see this. And most of the time you also see this in one form or another. But to my knowledge, we've never had any problems. Everybody agrees to get along, and it sure makes great bear viewing. This is some of the terrain. So if you come in at high water, this is one of the dilemmas you have to deal with along this stretch of the beach. If you come in at low water, of course, you can walk below all of it out through there in knee boots and you're fine. But high water, it becomes a little more of a challenge. And then there are the falling rocks. So these rocks came from the cliff. They came from up there. This is 1,600 feet high. This is called dacite, and it's coming up. The geological term for it is a dacite plug. So it's squirted up between the two plates. This nose right here is probably 15 feet long, and it's just hanging out there in space. We're surprised it's there every time we go out. There's more treasures to be found. And these rocks that you're sitting on, the entire beach, this is all that dacite rock. And this is what happens to it when it washes up and gets washed around in the surf. It turns into this really soft, gentle little pebbles that are made for great gardening. One more thing about this is about the geology is this basalt intrusion, which is also, this is basalt and this is dacite. And you can see the line there. It's just as stark as that. It's really incredible. And this is being squeezed by the two plates, and it's being squeezed up between the voids. I did a lot of reading about geology the last few days and decided that I wasn't gonna go any deeper than that. To save me from being embarrassed and save you from absolute boredom. But for geologists, it's an incredible place. More beachcombing, which this is down towards Cape St Peter on the west side. It seems to me there's always a whale or two washed up on this beach, which the bears love. For perspective though, that's the head. So if you go back, there's the head there. This just gives you an idea how big it actually is. And there's the blubber. The blubber always seems to separate from the bones, and it's sitting around somewhere else, and it's usually pretty stinky. More falling rocks. This is out of the Pinnacle. The birding is pretty phenomenal. These are common myrrh, often there by the thousands. But, and this is a crossbill, yes, thank you. And this is my buddy Hugh's bird list from 3 days, the 4 days that he spent out there. The remarkable thing about it is this sighting of Pacific loons. And that is a real number, 5,000 Pacific loons. And Hugh is a real birder. He's got all the credentials, and one of the guys with him was from Cornell, who was also from the ornithology lab. They'd never seen anything like it. It was absolutely spectacular.
2 mallard decoys.
2 mallard decoys and 5,000 Pacific loon. Which brings us to our current project. So this was in 2014, where the window either got pushed in by a bear or blown in by the wind, either of which you wouldn't have wanted to be there. So we went out that next summer and started replacing it, and of course we found more than we, had bargained for. But we cobbled it back together, and it fully intended to get back out there the next year. But once again, life got in the way for several years. So this year, we finally got back out there, and we stripped the building of most of the siding and replaced it with this incredible breathable waterproof shield that is going to hold it intact for the next year until we can get back out there and re-side the whole building. And we need to do some work on these raptor tails. This is going to be gruesome. This is actually going to be a pretty big job. I'm not sure how we're going to tackle it yet. But you can see there's work to be done. It's but it's savable. The bones are in great shape. Everything underneath that black is in really, really good shape, which is pretty remarkable for a 100-year-old building out at Cape St Elias. It's in way better shape actually than the brick buildings. And it's a great place to stay, very cozy. Got a wood stove, so it's a plywood, well, not even plywood. It's a plank tent with a wood stove and a killer view.
And is that the only building that's where you stay?
This is the habitable building, yeah. So when we were there last month, there was a whale carcass right there. The first night, the bear just walked right through the yard until we let him know we were there. So then every night after that, though, he just walked down the beach, and we could sit inside and have a cocktail and watch the bear chewing on really rank whale. Wade, you want to tell them how that bear smelled? Yeah. There's a crew of volunteers. So this is what happens if we don't get out there a couple times a year. This is actually like 2 months for the summer growth where everything is gone. And the weed whacker goes to work and we fight the jungle back, clear it off again, and just get ready to do it the next time. On a good day and on a better day. The end.
So John, do you want to tell us a little bit about, or maybe tell you guys about the fundraising needed for?
We've got grant applications in for various agencies. We've also got a fundraising project going on. It's been fairly well received so far. We're trying to raise $35,000 to reside that building and fix the roof. Once we do that, then we can look at what it might take to stabilize the other buildings. The tower really needs the steel on the tower really needs some paint on it, you know, after we dip it in OSPO or whatever it takes. It's kind of a big price tag. The price of everything has gone through the roof since we first attempted this project. But it's got to be done, because if it's not done, then there's just no point in even keeping it going, because if there's nowhere to stay, nobody's going to go, and if nobody goes, there's no reason to keep going. So that's kind of where we're at. It's kind of doom and gloom, but there's hope. Steve? The Coast Guard's been helpful on occasion. You know, they'll sling load in for us. Steve Rainey, Steve Richards have helped us quite a bit. And Steve Rainey actually is the silent partner on this endeavor. For 25 years, the Raineys and the Boccis have been trying to keep this thing alive. And, you know, we had a lot of ideas and a lot of enthusiasm 25 years ago, and we tried to get some grant money and we couldn't make anything happen. And then life got in the way, and Steve built a lodge and we did our thing, and next thing you knew, time flew by and here we are. And if we don't do something soon, it's gonna be too late. But yeah, in 1996, Tony saw an article in the newspaper and said, hey, look, the government's giving away lighthouses. Doesn't that sound like a great idea? And I think you can imagine what my answer was. But then she came across Steve, who also thought it was a great idea. And here we are. In 1997, the Cape St Elias Lightkeepers Association was formed, and yeah.
How many of the other lighthouses have been restored or are gone?
Well, they're all still standing except for Cape Sarachef, which is out the Aleutians. That one is gone. But the rest of them are there. Hinchinbrook is still used by the Coast Guard because it's their main communications. So that one is in pretty good shape because it's maintained by the government. The ones in Southeast are in various stages of repair or disrepair. Some of them have very active lighthouse associations. Some of them not so much. Access is a big deal. You can't drive to any of the lighthouses in Alaska, but some of them are closer to towns than others. We are the most remote. And besides being the most remote, we probably have the most inclement, conditions to access it. It's whenever you're out there, you're always looking over your shoulder, wondering if you're going to get home, because you're going to wait on the plane, and it's always up. But so don't go out there if you're on a schedule.
Yeah.
Aside from like just travelers or locals or whatnot, You guys have hosted a lot of researchers and.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on in that?
So the Science Center has got a weather station out there. RCAC has a weather station out there. The Alaska Marine Exchange, which has the AIS system, which is vessel tracking, they have a station out there. Fish and Game periodically goes out there, and they're the ones that turned the boathouse into a research station. It was the Department of Fish and Wildlife and Department of Fishing, Alaska Fish and Game, and they turned that boathouse into a bunkhouse. And that's what we're squatting in today. There hasn't been a whole lot of research done out of there lately. I think they've studied the sea lions about as much as they're going to, at least from the beach.
And he's gonna start picking up sea lion food to see what they're eating soon.
Oh, they are? Oh, well, there you go. Have I got a deal for them? I know where there's lots of it.
John,
Pete,
the bird list that you showed there, was that Hugh Rose that was
Yeah.
used? In the past, maybe 20 or 25 or 30 years ago, maybe in, 77 or 78, there were marine mammal observers out there, and I seem to recall that they also saw about 5,000 loons in one flock.
oh, is that right?
Yeah, I think it might occur somewhat frequently, maybe not every year, but.
Huh,
on
interesting.
migration.
Timing is everything.
I mean, everything.
Yeah, that would have been the people doing the sea lion research out there. That's what, yeah.
Is it solar powered? What runs the light now? Or the generator?
Solar. Yeah. And batteries. It's really pretty, when I said I came up the Shelter Walmart, it wasn't too much of a stretch. Considering what it was and then what it takes today to, essentially do the same thing is, yeah, solar batteries.
They have enough solar in the winter time to keep that light going?
It doesn't always
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
yeah. But anymore, it's been degraded to a minor light, which at the time it was built, it was deemed the most significant light on the West Coast because of Kayak Island, which I didn't show. I had a slide in there that showed Kayak Island. I don't know what happened to it. But for those of you that don't know, Kayak Island is 22 miles long, 2 miles wide at the widest spot, and it juts out perpendicular from the coast. So it is essentially the biggest breakwater between here and Tierra del Fuego. And it's really what makes fishing the flats doable, because it knocks that swell down. The swell goes past us instead of coming in and hitting the beaches and hitting the bars. So we don't really get a swell unless the weather kind of moves around to the south. It's a significant factor in the flats fishery.
John, do you know how they accessed the lighthouse back in 1917? How did they get there?
Twice a year, they would go in with a boat, and the boat was coming from Ketchikan. And it would hit all the lighthouses on the way up and go all the way out to Sarachef and then come back again. And they had fuel, and they had food, and they had a crew change. And then some of the stuff you read in the log books, there's a guy who went for a walk on the wrong day, and he missed the boat. He was there for another 6 months.
So has anyone tried to access that by boat since 1917?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You can go out, you can come in, you can land on this beach. It's really shallow, so you can't get too close, but you can take a Zodiac or a kayak in. It's kind of, I've taken boatloads of stuff out there, building materials and such, but it's really kind of a pain in the ass because everything has to be, you can't just pull up to the beach and throw it off on the beach. So it's actually a lot easier to sweet talk the Coast Guard into slinging stuff out.
John, what kind of shape is the helipad in? Is it Gonna last for a while?
Yeah, it's in pretty good shape. We did a lot of heavy weed whacking on it this year and cut it back, trimmed around it, took some trees out. Yeah, those are big timbers. Those are really big timbers. It's gonna take a while for those to rot. But it looks, they did really kind of set it right on the ground.
So for the average person who might want to go visit there, what is the process working with your organization?
Send an email or give a call and then arrange it with the flight service.
There's a website.
What is the suggested donation for staying?
I think it's 125 a night, but we might have to adjust that a little bit too, because of our insurance. Right now, that barely is gonna covers the insurance. Literally, we don't get enough traffic out there our insurance went up threefold in 1 year. And so everything used to be kind of hunky-dory and we could keep it supplied with propane and things like that. But then with the insurance, we even actually saved some money, which we're throwing towards this project. But we might have to make an adjustment on our price just to help pay for the insurance. Troy?
Well, your plan right now, this the short term, to do the 35,000 on the thing, and that, is there, like a 5-year plan or a longer range plan for the
35,
boathouse
yeah.
itself?
35 million. Which is probably what it would take.
I mean, well, just for the boathouse.
Now, for the boathouse, 35,000 is gonna do it. With volunteer labor, 35,000 is gonna keep that boat. You know, the shingles that are on it that have finally blown off, but they've been on there for 100 years. I think we can do a pretty good job. I think we can keep it in good shape. Once we get it done, get the project done, I think it's gonna be good to go for a long time. And at that point, then it's not gonna take much to maintain.
So it's a historical building, so you
Yeah.
can't put tin on it.
Right.
Are you looking for cedar shingles?
Yeah.
Maybe somebody has some ideas or something.
Oh, I know where I wanna get them, yeah. We just have to get the money to pay for them.
So I saw you had a GoFundMe.
So are you gonna paint them?
I'm gonna have them factory painted.
Factory painted, okay, I was gonna say, paint them both sides before you go
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah. We're on it.
If they work, last a while.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, these weren't painted at all, to begin with, the originals. Pete?
Do you have a solar power system there with a battery bank and inverters that you can run power tools or charge the wall? 20 volt back?
No. So back when Adam Lau was here and he took his science classes out there, they put in a wind system. And I could show you that, there was a tower there that they put it up on. I found the wind generator back in the woods about 100 yards back in.
Well, they like it.
Yeah, it took a flight.
Where's the one in the high school?
That's the one I'm talking about, yeah, the high schools.
No, but there was one in the high school.
Oh, at the high school. Oh, yeah. Adam's legacy.
Yeah.
The blades will fly off those things too.
Yeah. No, we use a little Honda generator. We cheat. It's down and dirty. We don't have time. Yeah, we barely have time to bushwhack, to get it cleared out long enough to get some work done. You can feel the brush growing behind you as you're walking.
Hey, John, when you've got that slide up, maybe it'd be cool just to spend a minute talking about the 2 railways that they used back in the day to lighter stuff ashore.
Yeah. Well, I've got that slide back there somewhere.
Just looking at that other slide, you can sort of picture, okay, the wind's coming from this direction, so you bring a boat in on this side of the spit.
That was the other side. So, yeah, if it would zoom back a little ways, you'd be able to see it, but so this is about where the helo pad is right now for perspective, and then the shoreline is about here. The shoreline on the west side is here. But yeah, that was how they got stuff back and forth. In fact, I found a great picture the other night of their dolly right down on the beach, and a longboat pulled up to the beach, and a chain of guys hauling stuff off the boat, but the quality of the picture wasn't good enough to scan it. So,
People might not understand that those are marine railways going into the water.
right,
And they would put a big longboat or skiff
Yeah.
onto those railways. loaded
on
with
the cart, yeah.
The wheeled carts, and they winch them up those railways.
Mhm.
The boathouses, there's 2 boathouses.
Yeah, this one is, you can see there's that giant pad in there where the winch was. There's not a lot of room in there, but yeah, the boathouse, they had room for 3 of their boats inside this one. And I imagine, yeah, they probably could fit another one in there. Yeah, and so the rails are still there. It's just they're buried for the most part.
So why is the house so big if it was just a lighthouse keeper?
There are 4 lighthouse keepers,
Okay.
4 bachelors.
So they needed their space.
They needed their space.
Oh, there's something.
And they were sniffing mercury.
Water and fuel storage up above.
Yeah, there's, those are redwood water tanks, and I imagine that's fuel. This was also fuel, that was a giant fuel tank that is still there. There's a little bit of fuel left in the bottom of it.
Didn't they have giant tanks of acetylene gas to run the torch?
Yeah. On the inside, yes, exactly. Big bottles of acetylene. They've got this whole manifold that goes all the way around the room, and with these piping where all the bottles were.
John, what are the dimensions of the boathouse? Roughly.
22 by 32, something like that. 22 by 34. I don't remember exactly, right in there.
John, I thought it was really interesting how the property was so much larger and that whole story behind that.
Steve, you want to talk about that?
In a nutshell, yeah, at one point, the reserve covered most of the end of the island. And it shrunk down, it was transferred back to the Forest Service in a nutshell. And so the Lighthouse Reserve now is much smaller. It just covers just the island.
Yeah, it's actually, right about there. I mean, they didn't leave too much room. They shrunk it right up. But it was, God, 80 acres or something. It was a big chunk of land. Of course, it was all rock and cliff. But, Danny?
Do you remember the guy that got shipwrecked on
Yes.
kayak?
Yeah.
I think he was a teenager at the time and made his way to the.
Miller, Jeff Miller. So he came up a few years ago to go out to the lighthouse and see it. It was the first time he'd been back since 1975. And they were coming up, they were going to Bristol Bay, and it was late May, and it was him and his captain. And they were in a horrific storm in the Gulf that lost power, and it was blowing 100. And as they were getting close to the island, his captain said, "Hey, here we're on. Every man for himself." There was one wetsuit on board. That's all they had. They didn't have survival suits. The captain gave Jefferson the wetsuit, The kid jumped in the water. They never found the boat or the captain, but he hit the beach and he didn't know whether to turn left or right. He had no idea. He had no idea where he was. He took a guess. He turned left. It was May. There was lots of snow on the beach. He had a horrific hike, barefoot hike out to the lighthouse. And they just happened to be decommissioning the lighthouse at the time. So there were like, all the agencies were represented. You know, there were 7 or 8 government officials there. And as the story goes, they're sitting around in the evening and somebody knocks on the door. And they'll do a quick head count. Whoa, this is kind of wild. Anyway, they got him in. He was in terrible shape. They tried to get him off with a sky crane. They couldn't get him off with a sky crane. It was blowing, so it blew for days. And they couldn't get him. That was the only helo they could get at, they had out there, because they were using it to decommission the lighthouse. So it was in Cordova. They couldn't get him off that. They finally sent the Sweetbriar out. The crew of the Sweetbriar went in to get him in Zodiacs, and he said the most terrifying part of his whole experience was they strapped him to a backboard and then lashed him into the Zodiac and went out through the surf. He spent 2 weeks in the hospital here and then like another month in the hospital doing rehab on his feet in Seattle. And he comes up here with his wife, his new wife, and they spend a few really nice days out there, and then they're out on the beach and they're waiting for the plane to get here. So they build a little fire and they're there. And then a bear comes out of the woods and comes and does a circle around them and then just lays down and looks at him. He said he's never going back.
Hey, will you say something about the spherical rock?
Oh, I forgot. Thanks, East. This was show and tell. Okay. This is called a concretion. So you find them in different places along the beach. And what it is the sediment layers come up. You know, as the sediment layers settle, they get air pockets in them. And those air pockets fill up with mineralized liquid, mineralized water. And the pressure is such that it makes these rocks. But the pressure is equal all the way around. So they come out round. And there are different places in the world where they're giant. And we've seen them, you know, anywhere from that big to that big. But they're pretty cool. Concretion, another new word I learned this week.
There's some on Nunavak Island.
Are there?
Totally around
Mm-hmm.
And you often find them in a matching spherical pocket.
Yeah, you find them in their nest, because everything is eroded off the top. Yeah. Thanks, East. And this is a glass ball. And that's not made that way.
Still finding those up there?
Yeah.
They kind of disappeared
Yeah.
about 20 years ago.
Well, and then the gyre in the Pacific broke up that had thousands of them. And then for about 3 years, you were finding them everywhere. But it's been a while, but they're still finding them as of, at least a couple of years ago.
One was down there last week.
Interesting, I've years ago, I've actually found.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Found them floating off the cocaine chain.
Yeah.
It is very hard to see.
Yeah.
But I've got a bunch of those. It's a bunch of small ones. They just kind of disappeared over the years.
Yeah.
When's the fundraiser?
It's ongoing.
Get back to the fundraiser, John.
Leave your email address.
GoFundMe.
So the goal.
Yeah, we got a GoFundMe site. Tony is
For
You're holding up cards and with a code on it, if you so desire, you know. Every $5 counts. Plus, it helps us show community support for these grants, and that's really important.
Crucial.
Yeah, very crucial. It's a big deal. They want to see that there's people in the community that are willing to fork out a few bucks to help out.
Are you and Tony the ones writing the grant?
Yes,
Wow.
another new endeavor. But we're getting lots of help. Thank you, Nancy, and others who are consulting.
Well, good job, John, and good luck with all of it. Thanks for all the work.
Thank you.
And there's cake back there.
Don't forget the cake.
Key lime cake.